Hello there. Today we're going to talk about upgrading an old printer. That's not a printer that many folks have seen. This is Boxxy Brown, a fairly old CoreXY printer that I designed early on. So earlier that was all designed in OpenSCAD. More on that later. This is a top-down CoreXY, so the bed moves down in Z, accomplished by these 3 lead screws. It can do differential leveling, but it never really needs to, so that was a feature that I spent a lot of time working on. Really should have just tied them all to the same driver. That's alright though. It also uses V-wheels, so all of these are V-grooved and the gantries are stuck in there. I'm not using offset nuts. Printed little springs into the plastic. That worked out quite well. The ends are laser cut, and the reason I had to do that is because in the V-wheel system, if this rail was misaligned here, I would have no way to correct for that before or other than learning the curve of the printer versus the flatness of the bed. Modern printers tend to use linear rails for CoreXY, and that's because you have a decent amount of play in the rails themselves, which sort of just moves the problem down the line. You do need to make sure your rails are aligned, but you can do that after the printer's assembled. Adjusting the rigid frame here, if it's not perfectly square the first time, is pretty rough. I'm not quite sure how you do it. So yeah, we laser cut these panels, also because we had a laser gun. This also predates the 2-layer belt style. This is nice. 2 layers is nice because the belts don't have to cross over, but I'm pretty proud of how compact I got this guy. Stuck in, and you can see the belts cross over, hidden away in here. Little PLA spacer. I can't tell if it's getting worn away or not, but the belts don't seem to be taking damage. And this thing is, good 6 years old. To round out the parts, this guy was running one of the very old Duet system, E3D hot end, and differential IR sensor. End stops everywhere due to the old Duet electronics, and a Bowden extruder, which is a good bit more recent than the rest of the printer. It is at least a dual drive gear Bondtech. So what should I upgrade? Well, the first question is, why upgrade at all? My answer on this old printer is that I want to use her for prototyping larger conveyor belts. Belts on a machine like this should transfer to any machine that can handle a very heavy bed. So my idea here is I have plenty of room on either side. I have a nice rigid gantry. I'll probably replace these. An extrusion frame with printed holsters for the lead screws and guide rails. I'm still going to do some of the clank belt prototyping on Bad Horse, but that's taking a good bit longer than expected, and this printer is perfect for the fixed bed and should be able to apply to any other fixed bed printer, Voron's, Ender 5, that kind of idea. I always hesitate to upgrade a functioning machine, and you can see clearly this machine has already been dismantled. I did take video of that saying exactly this. Lost it. However, we're here now. Anyways, to make this machine faster and more reliable on a belt platform, I'm swapping to the Duet 3 Mini 5 and this fancy toolboard. Sort of the meat of this video would be designing this part, because I kind of want to show off OpenSCAD and have a feeling a lot of people haven't seen it or how to design things this old. Again, updating an older printer, it's a big question of how much work you want to do, how much you want to replace. I am trying out some new things. I want to get to the belts. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this. So I opened up my old design files. Yeah, this is OpenSCAD. OpenSCAD. And this is how I designed this printer back in the day. Not a lot of people design printers like this nowadays. A few things about OpenSCAD. Hitting F5 will render your part. This is just a view that I can zip around. If I change some variables, you'll notice that nothing happens to my model until I hit F5. Now we're going. OpenSCAD is a full programming language. So what I want to do with this part, I already came and added a mount for a BL Touch. This is a hot end mount, so we have the 2 cooling ducts for the hot end. And the reason I'm modifying this guy is because I want to add this board. So this is the Duet 3D tool board. One of the reasons I'm using Duet electronics for this, I want to upgrade to this guy and I want to play with it and learn about this guy. So what I want to add to this part is a place to mount, and I printed one out with a new BL Touch mount to check that. I think the best place to do this is to mount it right on top, have it just sort of hanging out there in space, make it the easiest. Full functional programming language. This part here is the cooling fan mount. Within the cooling fan mount I have your hot end mount. Highlight that. That's where the hot end goes. Hot end fan mount, I should say. And I have 2 side fans, these guys. And a cool little, one thing to note, I'm using the same function for the fan duct here and the fan duct here. This first fan duct is the outside. The second one is drawing the inside. So if I take that off, you can see the path. You can also draw only the inside, and you can see that's your air path, your full solid. Don't want to belabor OpenSCAD too much, but module of the fan duct, a bunch of variables showing how we're doing and translating through. Big thing is I'm using the solid variable to control the wall thickness so that I can actually adjust the fan path. If I want the fan to be a little bit taller, I can just change one variable, and that duct height is used in here more than a few times. However, I already measured it out, so I don't really need to. Toolboard mount. I'm going to start it printing and throw it up and print it in the corner. It'll be the live printing the part that I'm designing while I'm designing it. So in order to hook the tool board to the electronics, I only need 2 wires, well 4 wires, 2 power wires and 2 CAN bus wires to hook to the main Duet. Everything else on this board, the hot end heater, the thermistor, fans, BL touch sensor, will hook up to this board. And you're thinking, it still looks really complicated. That's because of this chip here. This is actually an accelerometer as well, so you can do fancy input shaping with the hardware all built in. Seems pretty nice. Along with that, I'm swapping the E3D hot end for Dragon. Part of the reason I don't use this printer a lot is because it's using a 0.8 nozzle, and it's a bit of a pain to swap. Dragon uses these 4 posts so that you can actually unscrew the nozzle without needing to clamp the block in place. I'm also swapping out the differential IR sensor. This works well for the fixed bed, but when you change bed materials, it changes the reflectance enough that it goes off. It also has a lot of trouble with the belt in terms of rolling the belt. Some parts of the belt are shiny, some are matte, and that changes the sense distance. So still a decent sensor, but we're going to the tried and true BL Touch. So this is the Duet 3 Mini 5. It has 5 drivers instead of the full-size 6, and it is 5 2209 drivers versus the 5160s in the full-size Duet 6HC. It's also about half the price, so it's a decent compromise in terms of price to performance. These still run quite a bit more than the SKR boards, but I really like the quality of this hardware, and I really like to support the innovation of the Duet folks. Plus, RepRap firmware for prototyping is a really great way to go through. Everything is configured in G-code, so you can change your configuration on the fly, figure out what's working, and then compile it right onto the board. You can also hook up to a Raspberry Pi and do more calculations on the Pi offline, but they're using big enough processor that I don't think it's ever really necessary. Only real downside to RepRap firmware is using the expensive hardware. However, it has been ported to other LPC and STM32 ARM boards like this SKR line. So if I am going to try for a commercial machine on these, I'd probably go for a less expensive electronics once cut down for the printer, has fewer features, well, has only the features we need to lower the price. A lot of 3D print folk just want their machine to work, and only tinker with it to improve reliability. Some consider the printer itself more of a hobby to push the envelope. Both approaches, even their extremes, are totally fine. You guys do what makes you happy. Before you do, it's worth considering what your goal of the project is. I'm looking for what's the best use of my time so I can get this guy prototyping faster. First step of your upgrade, always remember, is breaking your printer. This is not a printer right now. It has no brain, has no hot end. A half upgraded printer is a half broken printer. Being at the bleeding edge is a moving target full of false starts. But if you enjoy the build, if you enjoy the journey, it's a fine place to be. Please, be nice to folks who bought a decent printer and just want to print. I'm going to run this guy as a two-parter, cover the toolboard wiring next, but things like screwing the BL touch on and swapping motors is not super exciting. So we'll see you next time, and happy printing till then.